just driving awareness has to then cash in somewhere else. It has to do something. And if stunts are the majority of your playbook, I think without the ecosystem around it that Emma's mentioned, you're just letting people know you're there and then never doing anything with it.
Welcome to Punchy by Rival, where we take the gloves off to share the hard-hitting realities of the challenger marketing world. Each week, we'll break down the buzz and cut through the BS, the top stories and trends to tell you what you really need to know and do differently to grow your brand and career. All right, welcome to another episode of Punchy, where we are breaking down the stories that you need to know from the marketing world. Our panel today, we have Mr. DuBose joining us from the lovely Surbiton, Jenna Cummings joining us from the tropical paradise, but internet hellhole that is the Seychelles Islands, and Emma Windsor. Emma is the head of marketing at Elixirr and was previously the head of international marketing, one of the true challenger brands. Sorry, my voice keeps cracking. I've been sick this week. Oh, this is so good. Challenger brands, the fitness and nutrition category, Grenade. And she's also host of the Marketing Nuggets podcast. She's a wealth of experience in growing brands, which resonates across both the B2B and B2C segments. Emma, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
So the topic this week, we are going to talk about stunt marketing. The story that we're going to dive into to anchor the conversation is about Equinox. So Equinox is a high-end gym chain. It announced on January 1st that it would not accept new members that day, as they believe the kind of people who join a gym on January 1st aren't serious about getting fit. They're just going through the motions of a New Year's resolution. So the campaign was called, quote, "We Don't Speak January." And in a statement, the company declared, "January is a fantasy delivered to your door in a pastel-colored box." I don't even really know what that means. So the campaign was criticized for being exclusionary and tone-deaf. People complained that Equinox they were gatekeeping fitness and that the campaign should be more inclusive. Obviously, I'm assuming they considered the risk that an estimated 12% of gym membership signups happen in January. So they got some buzz. What do we think about this campaign? What do we think about stunt marketing in general? Emma, I'm going to start with you.
So stunt marketing is one of my favorite kind of marketing, from just reading the marketing world to actually making my own marketing plans. I feel like they're the highlights of the year. They are very stressful. They are very risky. So you do have to do your research and be okay if you are going to get the potential backlash, which a lot of stunts do get. For this one particular, I think that as a marketer, I think actually, maybe controversially, I actually think it was quite good. On the hardest day of the year, for a fitness brand, they got newswork, they got into the press, from New York Post to Daily Mail. I think that, yes, people hated it, but people also loved it. There was that passion there. People were very, very split about it. And you're not going to have a stunt that's lukewarm that is going to be successful. So I actually think that they did do that well. What I hope happened, though, is that they did do some testing internally and check with their members that the majority were on the love side versus the hate side. And yes, some of their members probably did hate it, but it very well could have been a good retention strategy for them.
DuBose, I'm going to throw it over to you for your opinion on this story and this topic.
So I think there's a few things there. I think this is a wonderful competition to see who has worse internet, Surbiton or an office park in the Seychelles. If anyone dialed in for that, there'll be a thrilling conclusion to it later on if Jenna ever comes back. But as far as stunt marketing goes, I think, and I think as Emma alluded to here, I think there's an interesting thing in that you kind of have to go, who's it for? Like, I think the Equinox thing is interesting in that for the right audience, it's probably on brand. Like, I think it's interesting when we apply larger macro values we want to see in society to brands that are catering to a much more specific audience. That could be Equinox. That could be Protein World a few years back did like a Beachbody Ready campaign where they were like, maybe don't put it on a too bad, because basically aggressive body standards being put out towards a mass audience is a problem. But at the same point, for an audience that's buying a large amount of protein products or hoofing creatine 3 times a day, there is probably that thought around the idea of Beachbody readiness. Similarly to Equinox. yes, fitness should be more inclusive. Yes, it should be available to everyone who wants to better themselves. At the same point, Equinox is what, like $300 a month? Like, I think anything that charges that much for what I assume is a treadmill, a Peloton, and a class where you get to throw a kettlebell around is
Nice
probably
towels. They have
nice
too.
towels. Okay, so high thread count towels. That's not inclusive by its very nature. And I think the people going there aren't going to be the type of people who want fitness to be inclusive a lot of the time. Not in a bad way, just in there is an elitist to the brand. If you look at it, Planet Fitness, which is the Outback Steakhouse of gyms, basically ran a campaign in a response to Equinox, which was interesting because they were like, we do speak Januaries. And it's completely on brand for Planet Fitness. They're like, every single human being should come in. They've got a lunk alarm where if you drop a weight, it kind of like sets it off. And, you know, it's interesting.
That may or may not have happened to me at one point in a Planet Fitness.
Eric, I was throwing that out there to see if you like, is it multiple lunk alarms? Is there like a felony lunk alarm at a certain point?
They came over and warned me. They didn't actually set off the alarm.
Okay. So it was like an actual, like a person as operating as the lunk alarm. Oh, by the third warning, are you banned for life? That's kind of where you...
I don't know. I have to say that Planet Fitness, I think it's such a good point. We talk so much about kind of points of differentiation. What do you actually own in the space? For me, Planet Fitness is perfectly clear. And actually one of my favorite advertising campaigns of all time is the one that the Planet Fitness commercial. We'll have to put this in the show notes. With just like the big, you know, stereotypical bodybuilder steroid guy who comes in to tour the Planet Fitness. And, you know, the Planet Fitness guy is showing him around, and all this guy says is, I pick things up and put them down. I pick things up and put them down. And it's just such a good, and then of course they kick him out of the gym and we're like, we're not for you. So I think that is clear for someone who is an active consumer of the gym category, let's say. I didn't realize that this was Elixirr's thing. Is this a new positioning? I thought they were just luxury. I didn't realize that they were like real fitness, which in a way would have spoken to me more because that's like my thing. But so I don't know. I guess I have a question around like, what are they actually trying to own? Is this a different positioning? Is this a continuation of one that they haven't been able to deliver effectively before? So part of its strategy and part of its execution as well.
But I think to that point, like the old campaign was a commit to something. I think 3 years ago, that was beautiful, kind of stylized images. And then you've got a similar essence they're trying to bring to life here, right? Like commitment is about a long-term thing. It shouldn't just be when people show up on the first. I think there is a ham-handed approach to how they execute it. But at the same point, like for their audience, they weren't going to gain many people on the 1st of January anyway, right? Like if you're paying that price point to go to a gym, you finished up bottle service at about 3 a.m. on New Year's. You're showing up on the 2nd or the 3rd. And I think, you know, there's nothing to lose. There's a little bit of a playing to the fan base and the kind of user base and throwing a little bit of red meat there or other keto-based products. And I think, you know, it works for who it needs to work for. There's no large risk aside from the idea of a lot of hand-wringing at kind of a more mass level. And I think, you know, generally Equinox is never going to play at the mass level anyway.
I wonder if we could actually use Curo, shameless plug, for our new market intelligence tool. I wonder if we could actually look, because I'm assuming that the share of search for Equinox would have gone up during this campaign, but now, and maybe we need a couple more months. But I wonder if that's actually going to be sustained, because that's something that we could potentially show with data is like, does stunt marketing that drives PR, Emma, to your point, they got the coverage, is that actually resulting in increased market share and business growth as well?
I think it's the interesting thing about reactive stunts. At the end of the day, you can even just tell what definitely we should go through Curo to see, but you can even just tell from news coverage on this. After, you know, the 1st or 2nd week of it, it drops off a cliff, right? Like this is not a long-term brand building exercise. This is a short-term, get your name there, let people who are already engaged with the brand feel like they have a little bit of a cachet in January. They're probably like defending against gyms that were dropping their rates anyway for people maybe thinking about going somewhere cheaper. It builds the cachet and then you go from there. I imagine if anything, there's a seasonality to acquisition in gyms. Equinox probably has a longer tail to it because of the price point. So it's much more of a lifestyle brand. Whereas Planet Fitness and others, this was a perfect opportunity for them to riff against it and compete against the people who are going to go for a week or two and then never go again. Which actually, there's a good article we'll put in the show notes about Planet Fitness that Yeah, that's most of their consumer base. They make their money by going, actually, we don't have to service everyone who signed up.
Right.
We just need some people for January, and then they'll keep paying us until June.
Emma, I'd be curious from your perspective, knowing that you do, and I think stunty is maybe, I don't know if that's the right classification. It's really kind of like guerrilla, challenger, marketing activations that are meant to drive buzz. Knowing that you do that and have done that at Elixirr, and of course with Grenade, knowing a bit about your experience and what you did for the brand there, how do you think about Stunt Guerrilla? Is it a overarching strategy where you're like, yes, this is how we want to show up in the world? Or is it something more where you've got your marketing strategy, but when the opportunity presents itself, then you do something like this? How do you think about that?
So it's kind of reactive or proactive, right? And when I usually plan in I like to say activations. I feel like it's less, it calms me a bit more than stunts. I try and plan them to be proactive, purely just because of the way that my marketing calendars usually work. I usually have kind of one or two peaks in the year where I'm like, right, we're going to do something big there. But with that, I try and look more long-term with it. So I'm doing this peak in maybe a day or a week, but I'm also like, okay, but what can we capture from the event or from the day or from the activation or from the moment in time that we can then use for the next 6 months? And you can only really do that, I found, if it's proactive, because when it's reactive, when you're newsjacking, it has that very small snapshot in time, and that's great for then. But if you're proactively doing something, you can kind of orchestrate it. So you've got the video team there, you've got photographers there, you may have influencers there, you may have other things going on where it's like, yeah, that was like the main thing. But what you don't know in the background is all of this other stuff. So we really capitalized on it to make it more long term, because sometimes they can be so expensive. And so you want to make sure that you're getting every single thing out of it from that day or however long it is, so that you can use it for longer term.
So it is interesting because there is an element to this conversation that is kind of, stunt marketing, guerrilla activations as a strategy or as a page in your marketing playbook. But it also depends on what type of business and brand you are. Both, does it make sense for you to show up in that world? For an Elixirr, for a Grenade, it certainly does to me. For an Equinox, I don't know, maybe not. That's just kind of my perception of the brand, is that it's a little bit more elevated, a little bit more high end. But also, if you are a business that, if awareness is your biggest problem, so think about this other campaign that we have in the show notes, Generation V, which I hadn't heard of them before. I think they're a nonprofit that's trying to promote vegan, vegetarian here in the UK. They did a campaign. I saw it as a tube ad. I'm sure it was on other channels that said they will donate $1 million, £1 million, if Rishi Sunak, RPM, goes vegan for 1 month. So that's interesting, because I have to imagine it was successful for them, because people are talking about it. And at least for me, I hadn't heard of this organization before. So I think part of it is also, what type of business are you and what stage are you at? What's the marketing job to be done that's most important for the growth of the business that you need? DuBose, what do you think about that?
I think there's an interesting point there, in that I often struggle when a brand says their only objective is awareness. I think there are very, very few brands that just need to let people know they exist in the world. The idea that at the end of the day, if people just knew we were here, they would buy us. If people knew we were here, they would do exactly what we want them to, is incredibly lucky if you are the 1% of companies that can make that happen. But for everyone else, like, it's awareness plus something else. What's the thing you want to get forward? What's the thing you want to push forward? And I think, when you look at stunt marketing activations, I think switching stunt to activation works quite well, especially then when you chat about things like, Evel Knievel. Really, it was just really complex activations he was doing with a motorcycle versus stunts. But
Activation,
I think
man.
there's exactly, he's the world's greatest activation man. He activated across the Grand Canyon on a motorcycle. But I think, the trick here is really, at the end of the day, just driving awareness has to then cash in somewhere else. It has to do something. And if stunts are the majority of your playbook, I think without the ecosystem around it that Emma's mentioned, you're just letting people know you're there and then never doing anything with it. So I think, when we look at the Generation V campaign, I think it's intriguing, because I would argue technically, like, as most social change campaigns go, as most third sector and public campaigns go, yes, they want people to know they're there, but actually this is their big push to drive their cause into culture and in discussion. Like, there is little or no chance Rishi Sunak is going to go vegetarian for a month. But there is the idea that it's a wonderful foil. But it's not that they want people to come away from that going, well, Generation V, they're great. I'm going to donate to them or I'm going to sign up. They're actually going, vegetarianism. Okay, that's something we should do. And I think especially when you attach yourself to a prime minister that definitely has a base, but also has detractors within the country, it's a very easy way to attach vegetarianism to the liberal base of the UK in a way that drives discussion. So I think for all of these things, it's worth just going, can a stunt, can an activation do more than just put your name out there? Can it start to light the fuse on something else? Because that's where you're actually going to see some manner of marketing effectiveness to this.
Emma, I'd love to get your perspective for people listening, because a lot of this has to do with the people internally, approval from leadership, appetite for risk. In your experience, what's the best way to approach those conversations of like, hey, I want to go do something crazy to actually get leadership bought in on showing up in the world that way, approving budget for it, etc.?
Great question. I think the similarities between Grenade and Elixirr are that they were both started by very entrepreneurial founders who both kind of had a vision to be challengers, whether that be in B2B or whether that be in the protein bar. So they both had a lot of synergies. I think that they're probably the easiest people to persuade, in all honesty. And I think that it is kind of my job to be like, look, these are some options that we're thinking of, but bringing to the table, this is the potential hate that we could get. These are the risks. We've done some just very simple testing, getting people's opinions, seeing kind of things and putting that on the table and be like, it is risky and these are the risks. How do you feel about them? Do we need to do more testing? Do we need to slightly change it? But I think that you need to come prepared when you're pitching with not just talking about all of the positives that could happen, but also just giving them a bit more of a realistic view of everything. And with that, I always make sure I have like a solid marketing plan behind it. So I'm like, I know I want to do this, but this is my kind of goals. As DuBose mentioned, not just awareness, but this is like my end goal, be that sales, be that we want to get some more attention in this area, be it leads, whatever that kind of other hook is. It's like, this is the start, and then we're doing X, Y, and Z after it, whether that is then doing some real solid, like just geo marketing around that area after it, all of these kinds of tactics and bringing it that way. But it is definitely it is one of the more scary things to present, but I think that you need to just go in there and be prepared and be honest. If you don't know and you are worried about something, I am a people pleaser. So I like to have no risk, no hate, no anything. So I have to put that on the table as well. But yeah, just be super transparent, and then they can decide if they've got all of the facts.
All right. So the internet black hole that is the Seychelles Islands has taken Jenna and has not given her back to us. Either that or she's cut out and just gone to the beach. But DuBose, what do you think Jenna would say about this story and this topic?
Well, I think Jenna would firmly believe that all publicity is good publicity is probably a lie. I think she would probably say that at the end of the day, you can do active damage to your brand if you don't tie it to an understanding of how people are going to react, how people are, what you want people to do, and what you want out of something, right? Like, I imagine she might even point out there was the Burger King campaign 2 International Women's Days ago. Really small, but actually they just had a tweet where it said a woman's place is in the kitchen, and then underneath in the next tweet when you clicked through, they went, and that's why we're sponsoring kind of women into culinary schools, management positions, all of these different things. And I think what she would say is probably the idea that we all know what the click-through rate is on a tweet. So at the end of the day, I think stunt enthusiasm needs to be tempered with an understanding of how people are going to react, because I think, as Jenna has never said, but probably would say, there's the idea that, consumer attention is very hard to capture. Consumer outrage is much easier too. So at the end of the day, trying to capture someone's attention and do something with it that doesn't just make them angry is a hard task and requires thoughtful planning, understanding the format you're going to go into, and a clear understanding of the outtake you want. So that's just my guess on what she would say.
She'd probably also say, don't be stupid. Don't be stupid about these types of opportunities. All right. So before we go into rants and raves, DuBose, you haven't made a Simpsons reference. Are you feeling okay? Were you saving it for the rants and raves section?
I have. So Bart the Stuntman is a season 4 episode. It has Evel Knievel in it. He is inspired to become a stuntman.
Well done. Stuck the landing there. All right. So rants and raves. Emma, what do you want to rant or rave about today from the marketing world?
So I wanna rave, but I wanna rant first into my rave. So my
about
rant
Simpsons references. Great. Yeah, I'm all ears.
No, so it is Super Bowl season, my favorite time to review all the ads. My rage is when every brand tries to hop on it and make a connection and it's just not there and it just seems really inauthentic. My rave is someone that actually did it good this time, which is Fenty, so Rihanna's beauty brand. So obviously Rihanna is performing in halftime, and yesterday a couple of days ago, they did a really simple TikTok. It was really well executed. It was basically a conveyor belt of footballs, and then her foundation like squidged the colors from the on top. It was simple. It wasn't trying too hard. It was really like relaxing. The visual effects are really good. It was ASMR. It was just really nicely done. They weren't trying too hard. And the fact that they put it on TikTok, they had 5 million views in 24 hours. I'm sure it's much more.
Wow.
And they didn't have to spend millions in an ad space. And I just think they got it right. The timing, the connection, everything, which a lot of brands I feel like try too hard and there's just nothing there.
Love it. Let's check that out. I actually haven't watched any Super Bowl ads yet. So
it's all the same brands again. It's literally all the same ones. And a lot of them I found, like when I'm watching them, it's a lot of obviously it's American, but there's a lot of like American things that are going on current. And like, I don't get it. I want to understand.
We can translate for you.
Yeah,
maybe that's oh my God, my voice. Maybe that should be one of our podcast episodes, is like British translation of American Super Bowl ads. You know how they have like the NFL show over here in the UK, which is like explaining American football to British people? We could do something like that, but for advertising.
We need it.
All right, DuBose, rant or rave from you.
I have a bit of a rave. So, I think one of the things that I'd love to chat about was going to be the Super Bowl, but I'll chat about it next week. But on the topic of sports and on the topic of explaining cultural differences, I am really, really impressed with what Ryan Reynolds has done with Wrexham beyond just the TV show. For anyone who's following along with the magic of the FA Cup, the Football Association Cup for everyone on the other side of the pond, generally every football team in the United Kingdom gets to play in. You start to work your way up. And there are always Cinderella teams that make deep runs. And Wrexham was one of those. They tied with Sheffield Wednesday in, I believe, the 5th round and forced a replay. They unfortunately lost on Tuesday night. But I thought it was really, really intriguing because you look at the distribution of this Welsh football team that Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney have bought. And it was on ESPN on the States. So like national broadcast of a 5th tier Sheffield Wednesday Wrexham game is not something anyone would really kind of expect. And there were 27 other countries that also aired it. So I think, one of the things that really strikes me when we were talking about stuff like stunt marketing is this easily could have been a stunt. I bought a football team. It's great. Here we are. We've launched a TV show. We're done. But I think what you're seeing with what Ryan Reynolds and Maximum Effort are doing quite well is that they're creating kind of a persistent cultural presence that touches on lots of different sectors, lots of different things. And you know what you're getting because he's kind of pitching himself as a brand and then interacting with other kind of entities and organizations, in this case, Wrexham. And I think it's amazing because, it's supported the first season of the show. I think they're filming a second right now. You've obviously got all of this unfolding. All of his other brands are sponsors of it. I think, it's absolutely brilliant. And I think not only is it good marketing, but it's created a really good impact for the football team, which, I imagine will be promoted this year and slowly start making its way up the league table. So incredibly exciting. And I think it's one of those things, when done well, makes it look way simpler than it probably is.
Who's Maximum Effort? Is that his agency?
Maximum Effort is his agency. So I think it's really interesting. And similarly to, for anyone who doesn't know, Eric and I used to work at VaynerMedia with a guy named Gary Vaynerchuk, who also is very good at building a personal brand. And I think it's a very similar approach in that Maximum Effort is there almost functioning as his team to interface with different brands, to put different brands in culture. But I think one of the most powerful things, we had seen firsthand with Gary, but also with Maximum Effort and Ryan Reynolds, is they've demonstrated how to do it with themselves. And then they've taken that and broken off bits of it to do it with other brands, either in their little ecosystem they've built or in others. And I think it's incredibly, incredibly impressive. And I think gives us a blueprint for when we talk about stunt marketing, being in culture, all the things that marketing always talks about, but a lot of the time we don't do as seamlessly as we should. This is a real guidebook on how to do that.
We should have tried harder to get Gary to buy Dulwich Hamlet. Could have been him.
Exactly. For our American listeners, Dulwich Hamlet is a 6th division, I think, actually, a football team based in London, in Dulwich, and is an amazing team. So, if anyone is trying to buy a football team, I would recommend going to Dulwich. They're lovely folks, and the craft beer shipping container is well worth a trip on the weekends to have a few pints.
All right. That's all we got for today. Emma, thank you so much for putting up with us. DuBose, you have to put up with me. It's your job. Jenna, if you're listening, stay safe, wear your sunscreen. See you next time. Punchy is a production of Rival. We are a growth consultancy that builds challenger brands, strategies, and capabilities to disrupt categories. If you want to learn more about us, check out wearerival.com. If you want to connect with Jenna, DuBose, or myself, email us at media@wearerival.com or find us on LinkedIn. If you enjoyed today's show, please subscribe, share with anyone you think might enjoy it, and leave us a review. Thanks so much for listening, and see you next week.